Hi everybody, Colin Stevenson here, joined again tonight by Jonathan Fries. Hey Jonathan.
Hey Colin, how you doing, mate? Are we
Love
gonna do
it.
this for
Now,
the entire episode? I'd like to do this as some more.
oh, the last time we did this, genuinely the feedback that we got was great because your Scottish accent is pretty good for an American man. I will give you that.
Pretty good, pretty good.
It's
Oh, it's all
pretty good.
it's all that rolling of the tongue that you guys do.
It's
Hey,
awesome.
so what
Don't
is
have
what is my grade? What is my Scottish accent grade? What would you give me?
out of 10, I would give it a good 8.
A good 8.
A good
Thank
eight
you.
because there's certain things that people can't do with their voices, which I've found with American people especially, that can't make it sound Scottish. A lot of people in America, when I've watched films over the years, they sound a lot more Irish than they do Scottish, you know. And then you look at the Mel Gibson in Braveheart, like he did not bad. So I think along those kind of lines, it was similar twangs. We call them twangs, right? Similar twangs and pickups was similar to you to him. So I would put you in that definitely.
So you give me a Mel Gibson out of 10.
I give you a Mel Gibson. Yes.
Okay, that's pretty great. You know, if I was going to do the Irish accent, it'd probably be like this. This is when I do the Irish accent. I talk like this.
Now, tonight, Jonathan, I really want to speak to you because John has always introduced you to me as the most talented man he's ever met in his life. Now, I do love that because you have got a very, very interesting story. Now, I don't want to go and spoil the end of it because I do believe this could be more than one episode because it is quite an incredible story and I've listened to some of it and I know that there's plenty that I haven't heard. So I'm really looking forward to it. So if you want to start us off, obviously you're with Flowcess now, you're doing your bit
Right.
as a pastor, and you're helping people throughout different parts of the church. And I would love for you to be able to express everything, really, and just let people feel who you are because they know John, but they don't know John's partner, Jonathan. And I want everyone to know you the way that I do and the way that John does. So if you'd like to start us off, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Colin. So I would probably give you a 7 out of 10 with your American accent if we were gonna start there. But anyway, it's kind of unfortunate that John calls me the most talented man in the world because that's just really hard to live up to, or the most talented man that he knows, not in the world, but he knows. So I was born in Canada. My my mom's Canadian, my dad's American. Um, and I lived in Canada until I was about 11. And then when I was 11, I moved to Wisconsin to the States. And my first day of middle school. So I don't know, is that secondary school in
Yeah.
Scotland? Yeah, so middle school. On my first day of middle school, we moved from Canada to Wisconsin, and it's a pretty small town where I went to middle school and to high school. And I actually ate alone at the lunch table on the first day of middle school. Yeah. So being the compassion server, the people, you know, lover that I am, that was my first experience of being alone. And that feeling of being alone. And it really put a mark on me, you know? It really gave me a lot of damage in the realm of feeling alone and never wanting to feel alone. So, I come home from my first day of middle school and I just am crying, just saying, I want to go back to Canada. I don't want to go back to that school. People said I had a funny accent. I had a funny Canadian accent. Everyone kept calling me Jonathan. Oh, so Jonathan, you're from Canada, huh? Wow, that's great. Do you do a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting? And I'd be like, nope, I don't do any of those things. How about playing hacky? You like hacky? And so it just like immediately I kind of felt on the outside. And so I was looking, feeling alone. I was really looking and searching for a community. And I didn't have any friends, anymore. So I started to look for that community, and I could play sports. Like I loved playing baseball. I love football. So I was thinking that that would kind of be my community. The I could be involved with sports and all of that. And it was interesting. Um, but I've always sang like growing up. Like I was involved with church. My mom was actually a pastor in a church, and growing up in church I was always singing. We were always a church family. So I grew up around like listening to musicians and singing in church. And then when I was in those first few years of living in the States, I was playing baseball, and this kid had a drum set in his basement. And I was like, I I've always liked seeing drummers play. It's always been interesting to me. And I sat down and I was like, okay, this drum makes this sound, this drum makes that sound, this cymbal makes this sound. Okay, and then I was like, oh, so it goes something like this. And I just sat down and just could play the drums. And my dad tells the story about being at the house and listening, going, "Who's playing drums? That person's pretty good." And they told him, "Well, that's Jonathan. That's your son. He's playing drums." And my dad was just like, "What? You can play the drums?" Because it wasn't. I didn't have any training. I just could hear it, and this is the way it sounded. So, looking for this community playing sports, not really finding it, and so I played kind of almost all the way through high school, and I had a coach say to the team, um, Canadians can't play baseball, and that was another dagger in me. So through high school and through middle school and through high school, the community that I found was actually in church. That became my community. So I learned how to play, drums for the church band. And in that church band, in that, on that team is where I met the guys that I eventually went on the road with. And so I started to play in that. I found a community in church. That was like the dichotomy in my life is I felt very alone in school and felt like I had a community at church. So as I grew up in the church and was playing music, I became more and more connected to these guys, and they asked me to join their band. So I I eventually quit sports, and my coaches said, "Well, you're not going to play. You're going to sit the bench the whole year." And I was like, "Well, then see you later. I'm not going to play sports to practice sports. I want to play. I want a shot." So I quit, ended up joining the band, and just threw myself into that community. Man. And what happened is that being in the band, that really became my desire and my way that I could have impact on the world. Because that's something that I've always grown up feeling like there's this sense of destiny that I have. There's certain people that I meet and I go, there's a sense of destiny about you. There's this desire for greatness. You kind of look around and you feel like you're different than a lot of people around you. Like there's a purpose that you have that has been placed there. Like and you're finding it as time goes on. You're discovering it as time goes on, but you didn't put it there. Like it was something that was there. So that was a lot of how I was. And so my desire for community and impact when I started playing in this band, it was like, wow, this is my answer to never feeling alone again. This is my answer for, I never have to feel like that kid alone at the lunch table again. So we went on the road and we were like, we're going to make it. We're going to get signed to a record contract. We're going to make a CD. We're going to do this. We're going to throw our lives into this. And it happened. We worked really, really hard, me and the other guys in the band, and we took some time and made an album. And actually the manager of Green Day was the one who eventually the album got passed to, and he started a record company in the midst of Green Day's huge success they had with this album they did called American Idiot, which was just a worldwide. You're right. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Pat Magnarella started, this record company, and so we got signed to Pat's record company, and it became, touring for several years. So several years in my life, I was touring with this band, and meanwhile, I was becoming more and more disenfranchised with the church. What I experienced was people being much more open outside of the church, people being much more receptive to listening, people being just seemingly a lot more welcoming than in the church. So I'd go on the road, I'd meet all of these interesting people, I'd come home, and I just would feel very, judged by people in the church. And we would be questioned about the way we were living our lives and what our plans are. And there was some other things going on behind the scenes, and just like a lot of rumors and gossip and damage and abuse and all of these things I was hearing about. And I was like, you know what? This band, this is going to be my church. This is going to be my community. You know what? This band is more church than any church I've ever felt. And so I kind of, even more like I doubled down on this community. This is my way that I'm going to have impact. This is my community. This is my church. This is this is my family. And I just put everything into this. So what happened is that eventually, as time went on, if you're in a band, you have conversations about money, and the dynamic in the band kind of shifts because we're making albums and we're touring and we're spending a lot of time together. And I met these guys when I was really young. So as time went on, I didn't really feel like we were progressing in our relationship. I didn't feel like we were growing into becoming something more. And I think all of us kind of had this feeling. So what we did is we changed the style of our music, and we grew our hair a different way. We wore different clothes. And what I feel like that is it was this desire to try to grow, but because we weren't getting deeper into ourselves as people, we had to kind of change the exterior. We had to change the style, the music, and all of that. So we ended up changing the music style and kind of starting over in a sense. We, being this, we became this rock and roll band, and I really threw myself into the rock and roll lifestyle, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And, the what happened was it was just kind of our relationship, like over time, just slowly eroded until and I mean, meanwhile, we played some big shows. We did end up playing with Green Day. We played in.
Mega.
Yeah, it was mega. I mean, it was 15, 20,000, 15,000 people. And we had a couple nights with them. And what was interesting when we played with Green Day is, is the first night. I mean, those guys were amazing. The band was absolutely incredible. The guys meeting them, I always say that when artists are really successful, they're usually really nice. Like the really successful artists that I've met are really nice because it's terribly expensive to be an asshole. If you're an asshole, you're gonna burn a lot of bridges, So, but if you're kind and nice, you don't know who's gonna be successful. You don't know where people are gonna be in 10 years. So meeting those guys in Green Day, they were just tops. They were unbelievably nice. So playing with them the first night was awesome. It was like Adrenaline City. And the second night was a little less adrenaline. It was a little less exciting. It was still exciting, but it was a little less exciting. And I remember thinking after that, wait, where does this road go? Where does this road lead? Because if we were to just do this night after night after night, this is getting old. I'm not uh, I'm not feeling more. The second night I didn't feel more excited than the first night, and that kind of screwed with me. So anyway, we toured, we recorded out in LA another album, and I had an incredible experience in the studio with a producer there, a producer and engineer that I absolutely adored. I learned so much in the studio, so many life lessons being in the studio. That was when I really got to experience a pretty dynamic leader in the producer that we had. And we eventually uh, uh, started to erode, and we converted a shuttle bus to run on vegetable oil. Use And that's a whole nother thing. But we had this shuttle bus that we converted to run on vegetable oil. We thought we would save a bunch of money, but what it ended up doing is it ended up speeding up the destruction of the band. It accelerated our relationship in a beautiful way till we finally crashed in Ontario, Sudbury, Ontario, came back home, and that's when I truly felt like I'm out of the band. I was like, I'm done. And then a couple months later, we were offered to play in Aspen, Colorado, in the Rockies at the X Games. You've heard of the X Games, Colin? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so we were invited to play at the X Games, and we had like a $2,000 to $3,000 a night chalet that they bought for us. We traveled out there and we skied for free in the Rockies. And I remember getting to the top of the mountain, going, you know what? I was thinking on this trip, I could do this. If this is what it means to be in a band, like travel around and play these fly dates and do all of these, big shows, I could do that. That's good. That's what I'll be in it for that. Until we were skiing in the Rockies. The guys kind of skied off, and I was there alone, on the top of the mountain, and I remember looking over everything to my skis at the top, and then all of a sudden it hit me. I felt exactly like that little kid alone at the lunch table. All of my aspirations and my goals and my dreams caused me to feel exactly the same way as that kid. I had this plan for impact, for community, for church, and I just ended up feeling alone. And so after that trip was when I finally just said I'm done.
Do you believe that what you had based on your expectation of happiness was greater than what you actually got, or do you believe that it was because you were just going the wrong road?
So what was the question again, Colin?
So do you believe that it was your expectation and what you had for happiness that wasn't right, or do you believe you were just on the wrong path?
I think That's a really cool question. I think that my expectations, I had huge expectations. That's for sure. But I think that what I was doing is there was something that, you know, I've been designed for, that I've been made for. And I did my purpose the wrong way, right? There's there's all of these things that I've been made for, and what I did is I used all of my abilities and my purpose for myself versus for other people. Like I have this aptitude for music, but what is music? I have this desire for community, but what is a community? I have this desire for impact, but how does that happen? What kind of impact? For whose benefit? For me or for other people? And so I think that I had really high expectations, and I was going down a path that I thought was right, but I was off in how I did it. So I think that there's things in my life where, that I've been built for, that I've been made for, that when I use them for the benefit of other people, I'm actually finding out I still want to be in a band. But the band is different. The people that I'm working with to impact the world is different. And it's not just about playing music, it's about living the state of music. And even though I still do play music and I'm still writing songs, um, you know, to me, everything is music. And to me,
Yeah.
I'm learning about myself, and my instrument and who I am has enabled me to kind of play and live more music than I've ever experienced before.
You are the artist, you are the instrument, you are pretty much everything that's going to be created. It comes from you and to you, which I find absolutely beautiful. And there's a couple of things that I would like to talk about with your story. So, remember that feeling that you told me that you had, and you told us all that you had when you were feeling at that lunch table of being that kid that made you feel that you didn't want that feeling to happen ever again, and it hurt, and I can totally like empathize with you on a really deep level with that. I used to get the same when I was getting picked for the football team. So it's not the same as football in America, it's soccer over here. And I was always picked last, and the
Oh,
ones that used to say, you can have him, no, it's okay, you can have him, we've got enough guys, no, okay, we'll put him on the bench. And I used to sit there, and I sit there, and I sit there, and it's very, very similar, similar name, or a similar feeling to what you felt at the lunch table. Now, I don't feel sorry for myself for that. I just knew that it wasn't my thing, right? I knew that it wasn't my community, it wasn't my band, it wasn't my where I meant to go and play my instrument. But what I did find was when I came round to becoming, let's say, older, and in the last few years especially, that I wasn't on quite the size of the stage that you were on, but I used to go around and perform and do small performances round about the country. And it does kind of get away with you, and it allows you to get away with yourself and not really feel that. But the real reason I'm going on to this is because when I found that I had that feeling of not being wanted in that football team, that I felt that I had to hang on to other communities, even though I didn't fit in there. Did you find that with yourself?
did I think that I was hanging on to
Yeah,
different
did
community?
you just want to, did you want to feel just part of something, but you hadn't thought about it, or did you just want to, because obviously that, as a child, when we're impacted in these such ways, there is some sort of scar tissue that you carry forward with you. And we're only human, and regardless of how much we understand human behaviours now and the way that the brain works and how people all come in, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that we carry forward until that passes. Do you feel that was taken into your music or the band and allowed you to stay longer or kind of overstay?
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, that was that kind of that feeling of not wanting to be alone, that absolutely it drove the desire to hang on to this community, to put everything. I mean, it's the same thing that a lot of people get into. Like those scars are what can be so motivating for people to do great things. You know, I know so many guys that are so pissed off at their dads for not being around that they do incredible things to prove to their dads who may be gone or whatever, still trying to prove to their dad that they are something.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that.
And
And
I see that all the time. And that was I mean, that was my big one. My big one was the feeling alone, where I was willing to make a lot of compromises about what I believed in order to live in this community, because it was that my confidence in myself was based upon having this community and then doing this job or doing this, like, doing music, playing music. So I identified with all of these things that I have. I have a band and we travel around. That is who I am. That is my identity. And so if that is the identity, if what you do is your identity, if your identity is what you have, then the second you lose those things are the second that you're like, well, then I am no one.
this, it's great that you've teed this up perfectly, because this wasn't the route that I was going to go with the conversation. But if we can go back to you in a second, there'll be a lot of people watching this just now that will maybe understand where we were as the lost children at that one point, or the lonely children. Now, as people grow older, and anybody in the human form really um, gets older, we build up different layers of protection, different kind of behaviours that allow us to kind of counter the fear of being persecuted or being left alone, or these type of things. Now, what you and I have spoken about is obviously being on a stage now, and it's creating that art and using ourselves as the instrument to get forward. Now, the thing with people that I find, and a lot of people, sorry, I'll be more specific, a lot of people, the way that they live their life at the moment, is that the world's their stage, and they're their own instrument to just live their life. They might not have the experience of being on a stage in front of 10, 15, 20,000 people, but what they have got is they've got a stage where they're able to act every single day. And if we're going on to, like you and I, we're probably going to talk about lots of things in the future, but what we can talk about and bring into this, the whole kind of mental health side of things, and the energy that people lose while they're living the life that they know that they can, but it's not the one that feels most comfortable to them. So while they're acting out, it's like everything looks great on the outside, but inside it's that kind of empty feeling. Because I know that I went through that, and I don't suppose that you're much different, because it doesn't matter how big your stage was. There would have still have been in that place in your heart that just wasn't quite full enough.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It was I think a lot of the most sad times in my life were after a tour, like after we've been gone for 6 weeks and you come home and you're essentially just depressed. And that was very common feeling of just coming off the road and not wanting to be home, or the show being over and now what? And that's where it was like for me in my life, it was, there was this constant feeling of like, what's next? What's next? Like, I don't really feel like I'm making progress. I don't really feel like I'm going somewhere. So that mental health piece is this constant feeling that used to follow me around of impending doom.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
like there was this feeling around me of like being afraid about what's going to happen, and things being over and are just feeling so anxious and frustrated and not being able to put my finger on what the issue was. I just couldn't put my finger on it. And when I was in that situation, I'm in the band on the road, I wouldn't have been able to express that. But the gift that I feel like I received was the destruction of my plan for happiness. Which what it did is it just like I lost it. Like I knew that my plan for being happy ended up causing me to feel alone. It was like this full circle. I'm never going to feel alone, never going to feel alone. And then I end up feeling alone the same way, like I made zero progress. And what that did is that was enough for me to go, I'm done. I'm going to start over and I'm going to start building. I want to start building and digging and making a foundation on things that I know are true. And so that's what I did, the next part. So speaking of mental health, it was this amazing opportunity. I was 24 at the time, an amazing opportunity for me to really dig and start over. To start asking myself, where did I go wrong in this? Because I've been made a certain way, I have a certain purpose, and this feeling alone was not how this story was supposed to end.
And I know it's like we're cut short for time tonight, so we did warn people at the start they're going to have to come back to get the rest of this story, and it is going to be probably in three parts because the next part of this story, for me personally, now I've not felt it on this depth before, so I'm getting all this kind of new insight and stuff as well. So the next part of this story is where things start to go deeper for you. And this is the actual plan for happiness and not the actual plan that you originally had. And this is why I want people to come back and watch it because there's so many people there let down with a plan for happiness that they've kind of lived through and it's not worked and they're still hanging on to that it might work. And what I want them to see from the next time that I speak to you is that they can actually change the whole plan and end up even happier than what they want, what they thought they were going to be at the start. And it's absolutely beautiful. And they can do it while serving their purpose as well. So I can't thank you enough for your time. I can't thank you enough for being so open. And I'm sure I'm sure everybody should be able to feel you with the way that you speak. It's great. You talk with such flow and you talk with such, such meaning, and I love it. So yeah. So again, next week we'll do it again and we'll come back here for part two. Absolutely, dear Jonathan boy. So we will come back next week and we'll really push forward on this story and really take these people through the rest of this journey because it does. If they've not felt the magic just now, they're just about to. So thank you very much, Jonathan, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take
Thanks,
care.
Colin. Bye bye.